On this episode of 419 by Design, we'll build this stunning fish pot with Oak Openings pottery. We'll learn all about screen printing with Printed on a Lark, and we'll build this really cool custom beer flight with our friends at Ken Craft Hardwoods.
Hi, I'm John Thies from Oak Openings Pottery. Today we're going to be putting together or assembling our very popular fish vase. Okay, to start out with, we need to prepare the clay. Clay comes in big bulk boxes like this, and we need to homogenize it. So I'll take half the clay, pound it down on the other half, and this sort of starts the homogenation. So I take about this much clay and I'll put it on my scale. 8 pounds about. I'll have that here, and I'll take another piece and weigh the top part out, which is about 6 pounds. You have clay that's a little bit wet and a little bit dry. This stage here is called wedging. That will homogenize the clay for the potter's wheel. I'm going to form that into a ball. This is the top portion of the vase. I'll take my base and get that all wedged up. Good wedging exercise, good for the upper body. All right, so you have your base and we have your top of the fish. Ready to go. Now we're going to go over to the potter's wheel and begin. First things first is get yourself some water.
To make this beautiful fish pot, Master Potter John Thies must first make the bottom portion of the pot on one potter's wheel.
So I'm going to take a measurement.
Then, after some careful measurements, John moves to a second potter's wheel to make the top portion of the pot.
Okay, now we're at the other wheel, and I have my wooden disc. It's called a bat.
John begins the process of making the top portion of the pot.
Make sure that's stuck on there.
He says the most important part of beginning the process is centering the clay.
Next thing we have to do is center this ball of clay, much like the beginning there. There's a lot of repetitious work in pottery making. Centering is the biggest hurdle to get over with making pottery. Okay, get the wheel going a little bit faster and center again.
Then it's time to open the clay.
And as I go straight down, I'm going to open the ball of clay toward my body.
At this point, John is constantly measuring to make sure the top of the pot fits the bottom of the pot.
Back in. And right here is where I have to be very careful not to go too far out, otherwise I'll lose my measurement for my calipers. So I'm going to check that once again. It's a little tight, but I can take care of that later. Squeeze the clay from the outside toward the inside.
Then John continues to pull the clay to make the fish shape.
As I squeeze, I'm drawing the clay upward. Just let the clay slide through my hands. This part represents the fish's mouth, so I have to keep that.
Then John will begin smoothing the outside of the fish to match the look of the decorations of the fish that he'll do later.
Get one of my smoothing tools. So inside hand pushing toward the outside hand. Taking all the finger marks out. Again, I could leave them in, but I choose not to.
After one more measurement, it's time to hit the fish with some flames so it doesn't collapse when he removes it from the potter's wheel.
Yeah, this piece, just so I can pick it up off the wooden disc. Clay responds to heat.
Then John removes the top portion from the second potter's wheel. Then he'll put the two pieces together using a pottery cement called slip and attach the top portion of the fish to the bottom.
Take my cutoff wire, run it through the bottom here. So come on over, drop it down onto your base. I'm going to give it a little turn to make sure it's fitting.
Then John must reach inside and seal up the two pieces of the fish pot. After some smoothing and hitting it with some more flame,
starting to get that nice little fish silhouette. And there you have it, the perfect line.
It's time to do the final decoration.
Here. Okay, what I want to do before I carve the mouth of the fish out is I want to heat it up a little bit, otherwise it'll be too wet to work. I need to cut the scales out, I need to put the fins on, I need to determine where I want the mouth. So I'm start on one side and figure out exactly, and I'll give myself a little line here. This is always a bit nerve-wracking here, but...
Then John cuts one side of the mouth and uses that piece as a template for the other. Then it's time to carve the eyeballs,
come back
the gills,
side, come down. For the dorsal fins, I'm going to take a little slab of clay like so, roll it out, some little texture on the fins. And I like them to be a little bit asymmetrical here.
And the scales.
All right, for this step, carving the scales, I'll use a little pottery tool called a sculpting tool. And what I want to do now is just start the scale process. So that's one row, and I have to come all the way to a point here with that. So I'm just going to work my way down. I've been fly fishing for probably 10 or 12 years now and never really caught any fish. So when I make these, it makes me feel like I've caught my fish.
After finishing the details on the other side, it's time to head to the kiln.
The next stage, once it becomes bone dry, which is, you can see all the moisture except for just about this area down here, has worked its way out of the walls of the vase. And then we go ahead and we'll put it in this electric kiln and bring it up to about 1850 degrees. Takes about 12 hours. And I'll go ahead and do that. I'll load that in here like so. Shut the lid, program it, and once it's up to 1824 degrees, which is about 12 hours later, come back the next day, pull out your fish. It's handleable now, so it's not in the fragile stage anymore. It's ready for detail finishing, glazing, and then we'll put it in our wood-fired kiln. Here's an example of the different stages of what we just produced. And here we have the finished product, which has been fired in our wood-fired kiln. It allows us to let the kiln finish some of the surfaces. And in this particular area right here, you can see it's a little bit different. This is a solution of soda and salt we inject into the kiln at the very end of the firing, and that gives this nice little sheen to it. As opposed to the sheen of the glaze itself, we still have this variety of soda and salt mixture that's sprayed in with a bug sprayer, and we just hit and miss as we go throughout the chamber.
About 5 years ago, Steve and I were looking for an artistic outlet. He teaches graphic design and at the time screen printing. I'm a reading teacher but have some experience with music and art. And we decided to use our skills and create something for ourselves. And initially we started by screen printing tote bags. We ordered a lot of them in many different colors. We had a number of designs that at the time were not Toledo-centric. We had a fox, we had some arrows, we had some hipster glasses, and our first event was at the French Quarter. And we set up with all of our tote bags. It was a lovely display, and people kept coming by and commenting about how great our designs were, but that they already had tons of tote bags and didn't need to purchase another. We did end up selling one tote bag at the time, but it was to a person who ended up being a friend and a future client. So we quickly learned that we needed to shift gears and become t-shirt makers. That spring, we ended up in the Old West End Festival with our first Toledo designs, which was the high-level bridge and said Toledo Proud. We had a Toledo Born and Raised design, and that's still one of the designs that we use today. And slowly but surely the business grew and ended up overtaking our entire basement because we were doing this out of our home.
Well, a lot of times people come to us with design ideas, and they say they need something created. So what I tend to do is sketch it out on a piece of paper, figure out how it's going to, lay out, where the text is going to be, where the images are going to be. Once I get a solid design drawn out, then I switch it over to the computer and I put it on the computer, putting the images where they need to be, if they need to be drawn. Once that process is done and it's been approved from the client or whatever we're doing, then we make it into a screen where the screens are they have emulsion on them, so it's a solid coat of emulsion, kind of like photography. And we take a piece of film which is solid black and we put that down, and then we put the screen over the top of it, which blocks out all the light. When we shine the light on it, anything that has light exposed to it is going to get what's called burned onto the screen. Once that's done, you wash it out like in photography, like a stop bath. You would stop it, you would stop the emulsion from it being exposed, and then you'd wash out whatever wasn't exposed to the light, and that's what puts the image onto the screen. When you're doing multiple colors on a shirt, you have to make sure you're making the screens so that when you make the first screen, the other image is going to line up properly with the other one. So when you're making those screens, you have to make sure they line up on the glass. Once that process is done, we tape up the screens so no ink is going outside the area that needs to be printed. What ends up happening is you have an image, you squeegee the ink across so that the image goes on there. So when you're making it, you put the first color on first, then you lay this down, and I'll turn this here, and you do what's called flooding the screen, and that's where you put the ink across the image so that all those little tiny holes will get the ink inside those holes. Then you push it back across and you're taking all the ink that filled up in those holes and pushing that through the screen. You usually do it a couple times just to make sure that the ink is going all the way through. Once you're ready, you put the squeegee back, you pick it up, and the image is on there. From there, what the ink does, the ink that we use is called a Plasticil ink. It's like a liquid plastic, and when you put it underneath heat, that liquid plastic melts into the fibers of the shirt. So we have a dryer over here called a flash dryer. The flash dryer will cure the ink enough that if you're putting a second color on, the image won't get stuck onto the other screen that you're using. Once you get that done, you take it off of the pallet, you take it, and you put it onto a conveyor belt dryer. The conveyor belt dryer works kind of like a pizza oven. So it's going to heat it up evenly across so that all the ink gets cured at the same temperature as it goes across. Once that's done, it comes out the other side and it's cured and ready to go.
We have a first name basis with the UPS man. He knows where we live. If we're not here in the shop, he knows to deliver them to our house. We've met him in different places to pick up deliveries because we needed them in a short amount of time to be able to complete something. And we had a constant stream of customers coming to our front door. So at that time, we decided we needed to get it out of the house, and conveniently, this shop opened almost directly across the street, and so here we are now.
Well, when we started doing the t-shirt designs, we would, like we said, we went to the Old West End Festival. And a lot of designs we do, come from ideas that people say, hey, it'd be neat if you did something. Then we'd come up with the idea and say, hey, that might work out pretty well, and we'd draw it up, sketch it out, come up with some different ideas, lay it on the computer, look at what it looks like on different colored shirts, different colors, inks, different ways of going about making it. And then we print them and see how they go. The thing about doing the Toledo shirts, we've grown up in Toledo our whole life, went to Toledo schools. I taught at Toledo schools for 13 years. So we're pretty dedicated to our community. And it's nice being able to give back a little, and show some pride. And I like to think that, some of the stuff that we've done throughout the course of the years has boosted the spirit of the town and made people have more pride, especially with wearing the shirts. Some people come up and they just buy several of our designs because they like the designs that are out there. And that means a lot to me because when being a graphic designer, and printer, and artist, when people come up and look at your designs and enjoy what they're looking at, and it really makes it rewarding for me, because one of the things that I like about designing these things is it's an outlet for me to show my artwork, and get it out there, and people enjoy it, and we enjoy making it. And every time I come up with a new design and we see it go out there, and then we start seeing it walk around the city, we'll put it on a sticker in the back of a car, it just makes me feel good that we're doing that and showing more pride in the city. And the more we do, the better it gets.
printed on a lark, the official apparel sponsor of BCAN.
We built a beer flight for Ernest Brewery. And this show was kind of cool because it's a crossover show with 4-1 Nosh. So 4-1 Nosh is a series that did a series at Ernest Brewery. We made a beer flight. Beer flight is basically when you go into the brewery, a microbrewery, they make all these custom flavored beers, and you order a flight so you get a little tasting of 6 different beers. I came up with this round one. I added these in pipe-looking handles because it's a microbrewery. That's what I think of when I think of a microbrewery, is lots of pipes, lots of like fittings and everything, because all the tanks that they mix the stuff in. So this is the one I created. Now this was not the first one that I created. The first one was, I call it my pizza pan. It was so big, I got this far and I just like, nope. I did not like the way my torching came out. As I tried to torch it and sand it. The logo was really big, which made the space really big. So I was like, okay, I mean, like big pepperoni, so I didn't like it at all. So we scratched that one. We shrunk the whole thing down, added the logo on the side, crunched everything in, put the handles in, put our spacer in, and it came out perfect. And when you watch that show, you'll see with the beer in it, I mean, it worked great. It was a fun project. So next thing we're doing is we're gonna show you how we built it. So let's go. So the first step of this whole project is to cut out all the parts on the CNC machine. I designed the whole thing, with the exception of the handles, to be cut on a CNC machine. So we're gonna cut off the top, the bottom, the center spacer, all the little cup holders, and even the logo. Flame them, stain them, oil them, whatever we're gonna do to it, all at the end. But first thing is cut out all these parts. So that's what we're gonna do next. It looks perfect, just exactly what I wanted. So the next step is we're gonna round over all these little parts so they don't have any sharp edges. So when you're touching, feeling it, it feels really nice and smooth. And then we'll sand them all up. So first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna round them all over. So there we go, we're all ready, all nice and smooth. Now we're ready to start torching it and see how this logo is gonna pop. All right, so since this is a crossover show anyway, and we're getting ready to torch this logo, and the crossovers with 4-1 Nosh, why not have Tim come in and do the torching? So let's bring in Tim.
Hey Tracy.
How's it going?
Good to see you. I just happen to be in the area with a blowtorch and glasses, so I'm ready to do this.
I carry them in my car all the time.
Yeah,
you never know.
You never know when you're gonna need it. So
I'm gonna hold it, so if you're gonna burn anybody, it'll be me.
Okay, well hopefully not.
Right, so you're just gonna move right up across your logo, up and down, and make a nice up and down, easy vertical motion.
Okay.
And it's really kind of simple. You're gonna see where it doesn't fill in, and you just kind of go back and forth.
Now, is this something where I should use 2 hands, 1 hand?
I'd use 2.
Okay, 2 just
keep it steady. Go a little slower. There you go. It doesn't matter if it flames a little bit.
Okay. And then what we would do is the whole thing, right?
We would just go over the whole entire thing, top, bottom, front, and back. We'll finish torching this thing up, and then we'll build the handles.
Sounds good.
All right, cool. When they came to me and said, we're gonna make this beer flight for a microbrewery, my first thought is pipes, big stainless steel tubs, all that kind of stuff that you would generally see. So I'm looking, how can I make a handle? So I looked around. I finally decided to buy these small pieces of black pipe that would assemble in basically a U shape, like this, to create a little handle. So now the trick part is getting them to line up. I made this spacer. That's gonna be the fun part, is seeing how well we're gonna make these things fit. We may have to get the hammers out and beat these things in. So that's what we're gonna do next. All right, so look at this torch job.
Yeah, didn't I do good?
It is perfect. We got it done, both sides. We put some poly on it. I mean, you feel that? It's nice and smooth.
Yeah, it's really
We're not
smooth.
gonna get any splinters, all right? We have our assembled handle. And like I said, this is the tricky part because you can't get the spacing always 100%. So you can see it's off just a little bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold these things in there, and again, I'm gonna be on the dangerous side, and you're gonna hit it in.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna hold this, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna start over here and just tap it, yeah, right there, just tap it a little bit. Okay, that's good. Now let me go over here. All right, go ahead, start hitting it. A little bit harder. All right, hang on, I gotta pull it a little bit better. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
There, okay, now go to the other side.
We're going to keep tapping.
Yep,
it in.
just go back to the
Down as we go.
Yep, go back to the other side. That's perfect. So yeah, so we'll do the other side, and then we put the discs in, we clamp this whole thing together, let it dry overnight, or a couple hours probably be good.
Yeah.
And we're gonna be done. So let's get to the clamps so
Okay.
we can get this thing done. Put these off.
Look at that.
There we go. Nice beer flight.
Yeah.
But everyone makes the straight ones. And I just thought, you know, this is really cool. It's nice and round, easy to carry. I can't wait to go over to Ernest and try this thing out.
Absolutely. Let's go there now.
All right, let's go.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tracy.
Sure, yep, thanks Tim.